The examination hall at Orth 7 held its silence the way a held breath holds, not calm, but arrested. 40 cadet chairs, 40 terminals, 40 readout screens cycling through their pre-session diagnostics. 39 cadets settled in with their doctrine cards already spread, their posture perfect, their training locked and loaded. Cale Draven sat in the back row with his hands flat on the desk and nothing else in front of him. 3 weeks since instructor Veen had been removed. 2 hours until the final qualification exam would determine whether Cale stayed in the program or was reclassified to auxiliary support. He had not opened a doctrine module in those 3 weeks. He had done other things instead. The hall proctor, a Vothran administrator named Hessel, with 4 narrow eyes that never quite settled on the same point, walked the row of terminals and announced the parameters in a flat recitation voice. Crisis response simulation. Tier 4 breach scenario. Full hull compromise sequence, 3 simultaneous system failures, 1 disabled communications array. Cadets would be assigned command of a virtual station crew and graded on protocol adherence, decision sequence, and outcome efficiency. You have 90 minutes, Hessel said. The doctrine framework is loaded to your terminal. Cadets who deviate from approved response sequences will incur notation penalties. Adherence is the metric. Around Cale, 39 sets of fingers found their doctrine cards. Cale looked at the ceiling. He thought about a classroom, 6 weeks back, when the light through Veen's office window had thrown amber across the whiteboards, and Veen had said something that nobody else in the academy seemed to believe. 6 weeks earlier, the classroom had held 8 students, the overflow from applied systems, the ones the scheduling algorithm had assigned to Veen's adaptive response seminar, because no other slot existed. Veen taught in a corner room on the station's 3rd ring, away from the main training corridors, and he had the manner of someone who had stopped apologizing for what he was. He was Selhari, a species whose physical readout took some adjustment. His skin held a faint bioluminescent undertone that shifted with his mood, not his words, so you learned quickly to watch both. When he lectured, it deepened to a steady amber. When he was frustrated, it went cool and gray. He had been cool and gray in the faculty corridor the morning Cale overheard 2 senior instructors discussing his teaching record, but that was later. That day, 6 weeks before the exam, Veen had put a single problem on the board. Hull breach, environmental system cascade, comms down. The standard Tier 3 scenario. Run the doctrine response, he said. 7 of the 8 cadets worked through it. Cale worked through it. The protocol took 11 steps, produced a stable outcome, and generated a report that matched the Academy's approved template exactly. Veen looked at the results and was quiet for a moment. Adequate, he said. Now tell me what the doctrine does not cover. Nobody answered. The doctrine assumes you have 11 steps worth of time, Veen said. He erased the outcome figures. Assume you have 6. The first responder was delayed. 2 of your crew are Velhari cadets on their first tour. They freeze under auditory alarms. The breach is in the forward compartment and your emergency seal kit is in the aft locker. What do? Silence. The other 7 cadets looked at their doctrine cards as though the answer might be printed somewhere they had not checked yet. Cale said, You skip step 4. Delay the second atmospheric alert. It's the one the Velhari cadets are going to lock on. Send 1 person manually to the aft locker while you stall the pressure timer with the port manifold valve. It's not in the protocol because it's technically a systems violation, but it buys you 90 seconds and nobody dies. Veen's skin shifted, the amber deepened. How did you reach that? He asked. I was thinking about what the crew actually needs versus what the checklist assumes they can do, Cale said. The checklist was written for optimal conditions. The scenario isn't optimal. Veen looked at him for a long moment. The other 7 cadets were watching him now, not Veen. He was used to that kind of attention, the slightly wary attention that comes when someone says a thing everyone else was thinking and chose not to say. Veen wrote one sentence on the board. The drill does not care about the doctrine. The drill cares about whether your people are alive at the end. Come see me after the session, he said to Cale. Back in the exam hall, Cale's terminal activated. The scenario loaded. He read through the parameters once, confirmed the variables, and then set the doctrine card to one side, not defiantly, just out of his immediate eyeline. 3 simultaneous failures. Hull breach in Sector 7, coolant line rupture in the drive compartment, and a navigational array dropout that the automated system was misreading as a power fluctuation rather than a sensor fault. The comms array was offline, which meant the assigned crew would have no external guidance. Cale had 3 virtual crew members, a senior Vothran engineer, a junior Selhari systems tech, and 1 human, a sim-generated figure. No particular significance except that Cale noticed it and thought briefly of Veen noting his own name on a roster 6 weeks ago. He did not start with step 1. He looked at the coolant rupture first. Doctrine said hull breach first. Hull breach was the most visible crisis, the most dramatic metric, and it generated the clearest adherence record. But the coolant rupture, left 4 more minutes, would compromise the drive compartment thermal envelope, which would in turn generate a secondary sensor cascade and make the navigational array dropout permanent rather than recoverable. Cale routed the Vothran engineer to the drive compartment with a partial protocol, a hybrid sequence that was not in the approved framework but that the engineer's listed competency set could execute. He flagged it in the log, deviation, reasoning attached. Then he moved to the hull breach. The breach was manageable with 2 crew members on a standard patch sequence, but the Sector 7 location meant the pressure differential was building along the starboard corridor. If he used the main atmospheric alarm to alert the crew, the alarm tone would hit the precise frequency range that the Selhari systems tech's secondary hearing registers as emergency overload. The tech would lock. He silenced the main alarm. He used the manual crew notification channel instead, text-based, direct to each crew terminal. It took 20 seconds longer than the doctrine alarm sequence. He made the time back by having the Selhari tech preposition at the patch station before the breach notification fully processed, based on a predicted location rather than a confirmed one. 22 minutes in, the Cadet 2 stations to his left, a Korathi named Vesk, one of the 3 top-ranked cadets in the cohort, triggered the standard atmospheric alarm. On Cale's screen, the alarm detail read, Sector 7, full-frequency broadcast. Cale watched the sim play out for a moment. The virtual Selhari crew member aboard Vesk's station responded exactly as the Velhari cadets in Veen's scenario had responded 6 weeks ago. The crew lockdown notification appeared 12 seconds after the alarm tone. Vesk began issuing secondary commands, escalating, following the doctrine's contingency tree for non-responsive crew. The contingency tree was 7 steps long and assumed the alarm would resolve the initial failure. It would not. Cale looked away and logged deviation 14. 4 weeks earlier, 2 weeks before Veen was removed, he had told the seminar about a disaster in the outer station 17 years back. A Tier 4 breach station crew of 9, communications gone. The crew had followed doctrine, all 9 steps in sequence. The report afterward was technically compliant, every box checked, every deviation absent. 4 crew members died because the doctrine sequence, in the specific physical layout of that station, took 11 minutes longer than the time actually available. The inquiry board ruled it procedurally correct, Veen said. His skin had gone a gray-blue Cale had not seen on him before. They were right. It was procedurally correct. The people were still dead. He was not loud about it. That was what Cale had come to understand, watching him over those weeks. Veen did not argue against the doctrine with any heat. He moved around it the way you might walk around a wall that is load-bearing and cannot be removed, acknowledging it, measuring the space it occupied, finding what could still be done in the remaining room. "Learn the rules completely," Veen said. "Then learn what the rules were written to protect. Those are two different things. One without the other is recklessness or compliance theater, and the Academy has enough of the second kind already." 3 days after that class, Cale had passed Veen's office and found it empty. No amber light through the window. No boards covered in annotated problem sets. A junior administrator was removing the wall fixtures. He had found Veen in the corridor outside the second-ring faculty block, carrying a single case. "They realigned the seminar schedule," Veen said. His tone was the same quiet factual register he used for problem statements. Adaptive response was reclassified as supplementary, non-credit, optional, not tracked toward qualification. The dean determined that the curriculum should tight around measurable doctrine adherence. Cale had looked at the case, then at Veen's face. There was nothing performative in Veen's expression, no martyrdom, no bitterness staged for an audience. He looked like someone who had known this was possible and had continued teaching anyway, for as long as it was permitted. "What do I do with what you taught me?" Cale asked. Veen regarded him the way he regarded a problem that genuinely interested him. "Use it," he said, "not as a rejection of the framework, as an extension of it. If you cannot show your reasoning, if you cannot demonstrate that the outcome was better, then it is improvisation, and improvisation without accountability is noise. But if you log your deviations, and you attach the reasoning, and the outcome holds, then the doctrine learns something. That is the only way it has ever learned anything." He walked toward the lift. At the corridor end he paused once, not looking back. "Log everything," he said. "Every deviation, every one." In the exam hall, Cale logged his 41st deviation. The navigational array dropout was not a power fluctuation. He had identified it in the first 8 minutes by cross-referencing the fault pattern against a maintenance note buried in the station's virtual file system, a note placed in the scenario by its designers, probably as noise, probably because most cadets under time pressure do not stop to read maintenance logs. Cale had stopped. It cost him 90 seconds. The note documented a resonance issue between the array and the coolant system's pressure oscillations, which meant restoring the coolant line, already done, would automatically begin recovering the array, provided a manual reset command was issued within the next 12 minutes. He issued the reset. The array began climbing back. His crew managed the hull breach. Drive compartment stable. Atmospheric system on manual notification protocol. Deviation 41 logged with attached reasoning. Crew composition includes a species whose auditory stress response to standard alarm frequencies would impair task performance. Text channel substituted. Outcome: no crew lockdown. SEAL procedure initiated 19 seconds late but completed without interruption. At the 63-minute mark, the simulation registered resolution. Hull integrity restored. Drive compartment nominal. Navigational array at 71% and climbing. 0 crew casualties. The doctrine adherence score on his terminal read 29%. Cale looked at that number. He looked at the outcome figures beside it. Then he opened the deviation log, 44 entries, each with a brief attached note covering the reasoning, the alternative, and the measured result. He formatted it the way Veen had shown him. Clear, outcome first, sequential, no editorializing. He submitted the exam. Around him, cadets were still working. Vesk had not resolved the crew lockdown loop. Cale could see 3 status alert windows cascading on the neighboring screen, each one a downstream consequence of the first alarm broadcast. Other cadets typed steadily, methodically, heads down over their doctrine cards. 2 had already triggered notation flags, the small red markers that appeared when a response deviated from sequence without an attached log. Neither of them would notice until the exam ended. Hessel moved between the terminals with arms folded in the Vothran fashion, 4 limbs crossed at the midpoints in a configuration that communicated supervision without engagement. The administrator stopped at Kale's station, looked at the finished state, looked at the 29% adherence score, looked at the outcome summary, then at the deviation log counter. 44 entries. A long moment passed. "You were in Wien's seminar," Hessel said, "not a question." "Yes." "Your adherence rating will require formal review." "The deviation log is attached," Kale said. 44 entries. Each one has the reasoning and the outcome comparison against the doctrine baseline. Hessel did not respond immediately. The 4 narrow eyes tracked across the screen in the measured way of someone reading a document they did not expect to find in this format, assembled this carefully. The rest of the hall typed on around them. Kale picked up his bag. He walked out of the exam hall with 27 minutes still on the clock. The corridor outside was empty in both directions. He turned toward the third ring, toward the corner of the station where a room still held the faint smell of whiteboard cleaner and the slight amber quality of light through a west-facing port. Even though the boards were gone now, even though the room had been reassigned. He thought about what Wien had said. If the outcome holds, the doctrine learns something. The outcome had held. Somewhere behind him in the hall, Hessel was still reading the log.